Canada is grappling with one of the most severe housing crises in its history, transforming homeownership into an unattainable aspiration for millions of Canadians, especially in major urban hubs like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. The housing crisis in these cities is the product of a myriad of interwoven factors, all contributing to skyrocketing home prices and making affordable housing an elusive goal for many. This deep dive into Canada's housing crisis unpacks these complexities, revealing how this confluence of issues is reshaping the lives of everyday Canadians and amplifying economic inequality. Over the past decade, Canada's housing market has experienced an extraordinary surge in property prices, driven in part by a swelling population. Immigration has undoubtedly brought countless benefits to Canada, stimulating economic growth, enhancing labor markets, and diversifying the cultural landscape. But it has also significantly heightened the demand for housing. The influx of newcomers, primarily drawn to urban centers where job opportunities and amenities are concentrated, has led to an intense competition for available homes, pushing prices to unprecedented levels. While this growth has been a boon for the Canadian economy, the surge in demand has outstripped housing supply, creating a severe crunch that has left many Canadians, especially first-time buyers, struggling to enter the market. The impact of immigration on housing demand cannot be understated. Canada has one of the highest rates of population growth in the G7, largely driven by immigration policies that prioritize attracting skilled workers. While this policy is key to sustaining long-term economic growth, it places immense pressure on housing, particularly in urban areas like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, where a majority of new arrivals settle. These cities, already dealing with high housing costs, have seen further strain as the competition for limited housing drives prices even higher. This surge in demand has exacerbated the existing housing shortage, particularly in markets that were already struggling to keep pace with population growth. As a result, homeownership is becoming an unattainable dream for many middle-class Canadians, especially younger generations who are just starting their careers and cannot compete with the rising costs. In addition to the immigration-driven demand, Canada's historically low interest rates have played a pivotal role in fueling the housing market frenzy. Over the past several years, the Bank of Canada maintained low borrowing costs to stimulate the economy, which initially appeared to benefit prospective homeowners by making mortgages more affordable. However, this easy access to cheap credit inadvertently encouraged a surge of buyers into the market, further escalating demand. As interest rates remained low, more buyers were able to qualify for larger mortgages, which intensified competition for housing and drove up prices even further. The availability of cheap loans also enticed speculative investors to pour money into the real estate market, compounding the problem as they snapped up properties, often leaving them vacant or renting them out at exorbitant rates. Speculative buying, particularly by investors, both domestic and foreign, has been one of the key drivers of Canada's housing price explosion. Investors, sensing the potential for substantial returns, have increasingly treated real estate as a financial asset rather than a place to live. In cities like Vancouver and Toronto, where housing prices have soared to astronomical levels, speculative buying has only worsened the situation. Foreign investors in particular have been attracted to the stability of Canadian real estate, viewing it as a safe place to park their wealth amidst global economic uncertainty. While foreign capital has helped boost the Canadian economy, it has also driven up property prices, making it even harder for local residents to compete for homes. Despite government efforts to curtail foreign speculation, such as the implementation of foreign buyer taxes, these measures have had limited success. In many cases, they have only slowed down speculative activity temporarily without addressing the core issue, the supply-demand imbalance. The ripple effects of this housing crisis have spilled over into the rental market, compounding the challenges for those who cannot afford to buy. With homeownership increasingly out of reach, more Canadians are turning to rental properties, which has driven up rents across the country. The rental market has become just as competitive as the housing market, particularly in urban centers where affordable rental units are in short supply. The scarcity of rental properties combined with soaring demand has caused rents to skyrocket, leaving many low- and middle-income Canadians struggling to find affordable housing. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, rent hikes have reached unprecedented levels, further entrenching economic inequality and deepening the divide between those who own property and those who do not. Government interventions to address the housing crisis have been numerous, but their impact has been mixed. Policies like tighter mortgage lending rules were introduced to curb demand and prevent over-leveraging, but these measures have had the unintended consequence of making it harder for first-time buyers to qualify for loans, leaving them further marginalized in a market that increasingly favors wealthier individuals and investors. Additionally, the government has attempted to boost the housing supply through various initiatives, such as encouraging the construction of new homes and implementing zoning reforms. However, these efforts have been slow to bear fruit, and the pace of new housing construction continues to lag behind the growing demand. A significant barrier to resolving Canada's housing crisis is the lack of affordable housing construction. While there has been a notable increase in the development of high-end condos and luxury homes in many Canadian cities, the construction of affordable housing units has not kept pace. Restrictive zoning laws and lengthy approval processes often deter developers from building higher-density housing, such as apartments or multifamily dwellings, which could provide more affordable options for buyers and renters. Instead, many urban areas remain dominated by single-family homes, which are not only more expensive but also take up more land, making them less accessible to the average Canadian. The imbalance between the construction of luxury homes and affordable housing has further skewed the market, leaving many Canadians priced out of both the ownership and rental markets. The COVID-19 pandemic added yet another layer of complexity to Canada's housing crisis. At the onset of the pandemic, there was an initial slowdown in the housing market as economic uncertainty gripped the country. However, this was quickly followed by a surprising boom. Low interest rates, coupled with the shift to remote work, led many Canadians to reevaluate their housing needs. As a result, there was a surge in demand for larger homes outside of city centers, driving up prices not only in urban areas but also in suburban and rural regions. This trend, known as the urban exodus, further depleted the pool of affordable housing options as even traditionally more affordable areas saw rapid price increases. The long-term consequences of Canada's housing crisis are profound. The growing gap between homeowners and renters is exacerbating economic inequality, as wealth increasingly becomes concentrated among those who own property. Homeownership, once seen as a critical step toward building personal wealth, is now out of reach for many young Canadians, even those with stable jobs and incomes. This generational divide is reshaping the Canadian economy, affecting everything from family formation to consumer spending patterns. Meanwhile, household debt continues to climb as Canadians take on massive mortgages to afford homes, raising concerns about long-term financial stability. Should interest rates rise, it could trigger a wave of defaults, potentially leading to a broader economic downturn. Canada's housing crisis is a deeply entrenched problem that requires more than just short-term fixes. Addressing this issue will require bold, systemic changes, including reforming zoning laws to encourage the development of diverse housing types, increasing the construction of affordable housing, and implementing policies that target the root causes of the housing shortage. Without meaningful, sustained action, the dream of homeownership will continue to slip further out of reach for future generations, while rental costs keep climbing, deepening the divide between homeowners and renters.